Good morning, afternoon, or evening, folks, and welcome to Cast of All Trades, the show where we talk about developing skills, exploring ideas, and following curiosity. My name is Orion, and in this episode, I talk about what I learned from 1 year of podcasting, what I learned about others, what I learned about content creation, and what I learned about myself. So let's get into it. At the beginning of 2024, I decided that I wanted to try semi-professional podcasting. I wanted to see what would it be like if I were to record a show and post it every single week, every Thursday. And that's what I did. I've recorded and posted episodes for every single Thursday of 2024, totaling to 54 episodes. I started off with 3 episodes on that first week as a sort of lead up and launch to Cast of All Trades, and then every week after that, I posted every Thursday, trying to go for around 7 a.m. Central Time. Sometimes missed it, but generally that was just due to a scheduling error. I started Cast of All Trades because I've listened to many hundreds of hours of podcasts over my life. I love podcasts. I love hearing the conversations that other people get to have, and I think, wow, that was an awesome conversation. I wish I could have talks like that. I wish I could meet people like this. I wish I could discuss conversations or discuss topics and ideas like these with other people more frequently. So I thought, okay, why don't I just do it? Why don't I try? Why don't I make a podcast and just go out and go for it? What was the topic that I was going to cover? I wanted to talk about generalism and being a jack of all trades because that gave me the opportunity to reach out to basically anyone, talk to them about their interests, talk to them about their stuff. It gave me the perfect opportunity to bounce between topics because that's sort of the whole point of being a jack of all trades. They were able to talk about basically anything with basically anyone. So that's the rough introduction to Cast of All Trades, why I made it, and what the whole podcast has been about. So what have I actually learned from this past year of podcasting? I've broken this up into 3 main sections: what I learned about people, what I learned about content creation, and what I learned about myself. I want to start with what I learned about people. There were a couple main ideas that came up time and time again as I was thinking, wow, that's interesting, or what I learned from my podcasting. I learned 2 very contradictory things that are both true. First is that no one cares, and second is that you never know who's watching. Starting with the first, no one cares. This falls under both about people and about content creation in general, but generally, no one cares that you are making a thing. Very rarely will you have something that, if you make it, they will come. Very few companies are able to do that successfully, and very few content creators are able to do that successfully. Generally, if you create something, no one's going to care about it. Sure, you might have some people that watch or listen because they want to support you, but most people won't, or even the people who do start watching or listening to support you, they'll probably die out over time. They'll say, awesome, I've listened to a couple episodes of his, he's probably got it now. A good example of this is when you launch something new and you post about it on Facebook or you post about it on a couple different places, you might get some family, some friends who check out the first 2-3 episodes, but then after that, like, it's not really my cup of tea. It's cool that you're doing the thing, but not really my thing. And I certainly did see that. I saw a lot of people that hopped onto it at first that wanted to check out what I was doing because I'm always doing kind of interesting, weird stuff. But then after a little bit, it just sort of faded out, trickled away, where now it's, okay, you've done this, like you launched it, awesome. Now what? You just got to keep going. And the same people that were there at the beginning aren't always there at the end, or aren't always there throughout the experience. So yeah, like I said, some people might watch or listen at first because they want to support you, and that's awesome, that's great, but most people aren't going to do that. And this whole thing of nobody cares that you made a thing is, some people might think, well, that's kind of disappointing, I put a lot of effort into doing this thing, but it's also really a blessing in disguise. It's kind of great, because it means that no one's going to see your worst stuff. You are free to fail in obscurity as much as you like. Really, the worst thing that can happen from you trying something new isn't that you fail in front of a bunch of people. Usually, the worst thing that's going to happen is that you fail quietly, that you do something bad, you put something bad out there, and no one sees it. You want to know why? Because everyone else is so worried about looking perfect and being perfect and worrying about what other people are thinking about them, when in reality, everyone's stuck in this frame of mindset that they don't realize that no one is really thinking about them. So that's part of this whole thing that nobody cares. It's kind of a blessing that at first nobody cares because you can just keep on making stuff. You can practice, you can experiment, you can try out wacky things, and probably no one's going to listen. Nobody's going to watch. And you're not going to get harshly criticized for doing something or trying something experimental because no one's going to see it anyways. At the same time, you never know who's watching or you never know who's listening. I've had conversations with people in the past that they brought up my podcast and said, like, hey, that's a cool thing that you're doing. Like, that's awesome. That inspires me to go and do something else. People may not always be watching or listening. I had a number of people who don't actually listen to the podcast mention to me, oh yeah, you're still doing that podcast. That's super cool. That inspired me to go and do this other thing. Because I'm doing this thing, because I'm being very public about the things that I am doing and working on, I've been able to inspire other people to go and try things they never would have been able to. A good example of this is one of my friends told me that, not necessarily because of my podcasting, because of other stuff that I've done, that I helped inspire her to publish her first book after she saw me do my podcasting, after she saw me write and publish my first book and do all my other weird projects over the years. So you never know who's watching because they may not speak up all the time, or they might not even actively listen or watch the things that you're doing, but just be tangentially aware that you're doing a thing. So it's just interesting that it can simultaneously be true that nobody cares about what you're doing, but also people are watching and people are noticing. Both can be very true. Another lesson I learned about other people comes from my experiences trying to set up interviews with people, trying to reach out to guests and figure out, I want to talk to this person, how do I get them on my show? And what I learned is that most people are more than willing to talk to a stranger if it's for a podcast interview, especially if you're humble enough to ask them and figure out, how do I talk to this person in a way that really flatters them to say, I think that what you do is interesting. I want to learn more about it. Can you come onto my show and teach me about this thing that you're an expert in? So many people, I cold emailed them, I cold messaged them and said, you do a cool thing. I see what you're doing. I want to learn more about it. Can you come and talk to me and share with me the things that you're doing? And I think I've only ever gotten one, maybe two people to say no to that. And it was always a great experience for me. There were a couple interviews that I wish could have gone better, that perhaps the guest and I weren't on the right frame of mind. We didn't have the same objectives. But in 99% of my interviews that I've done, I was very satisfied with the outcome. And the guests were very happy to come on as well. We would sit and chat afterwards, just reflecting on how did the interview go? What do you think could have gone better? How could I have been a better interviewer? And what do they wish that could have been touched on that maybe we didn't? And in most situations, we touched on basically everything they wanted to talk about. And they were ecstatic and excited, like, wow, that was cool. That was a fun experience. And you'd just be amazed that how many people would be willing to go out and try and do something to help you if you were just going to ask them. Just finding a way to be humble and asking someone, can you share this with me? Can you share your knowledge? Can I give you a platform to talk about your stuff? And it was a wonderful experience for me to be able to learn how to network with some of these people, to have them come on and share all of their information, to share what they do. So those are the main things that I learned about other people, that for the most part, no one cares. At the same time, you never know who's watching, and a lot of people are willing to help you out if you're just humble enough to ask. Next, I want to touch on what I learned about YouTube and podcast platforms and content creation in general. The first big thing that I learned is that the content treadmill is real. If you want to be a content creator, that usually means that you're committing to be on the treadmill. That means you're constantly creating, you're constantly posting whether you want to or not. It certainly helps to create in batches and schedule things out for a couple weeks or a couple months ahead of time if you can. At the very beginning, when I was starting out podcasting, that's exactly what I did. I would batch record episodes where I would take a week and maybe record 4, 5, 6 episodes and schedule those out over the next 4, 5, 6 weeks. And I was at my happiest in the podcast when I was doing this, and it was great. You can step away for that short amount of time, while you have your stuff scheduled out, but also you don't really stop thinking about it. You can't really turn it off because you know that it's there. The content treadmill is there. Yes, you might have stuff scheduled out for a while. You might have stuff scheduled out for 5 weeks. Then it's 4 weeks. Then it's 3 weeks. And you realize, oh, wait a second, I have to go out and record a bunch of stuff again. You might not have guests set up. You might not have topics set up. You might not have things ready. And you have to constantly be thinking about that and constantly having it in the back of your mind of, okay, I always have to be thinking of what's the next thing, because there is no explicit like end done of doing the thing. If you're committing to this, you are committing to it. You say, I want to be a professional content creator. What does that actually look like? From an outside perspective, it often just looks like, oh yeah, you just pull out the camera, you record the thing, you have a fun time, you put it on YouTube, you put it on podcast platforms, and you're done. Or you sit down, you turn on the microphones, you talk to someone for an hour, and you turn it off. Maybe you do a little bit of editing to get the ums and ahs out of there, and then you just put it up there, and no problems. Like that's just how it works. But no, there's a lot of back end stuff to it that people don't acknowledge, that people don't realize. I would spend hours each week preparing and trying to put together the right questions for interviews, trying to figure out what does this person do? What are the best questions I could ask this person? What are the questions that they've already been asked time and time and time again so that I'm not the one asking it for the umpteenth time? And what are the questions that they never get asked that they really want someone to ask them, but they haven't actually put out there yet? It's been great. It's been awesome. But it's also very time consuming and draining to do that all the time. So just the main thing that I learned from that whole the content treadmill is that you can never really turn it off. You might take a short break as you schedule things out for a while, but it's always going to be lingering in the back of your head. The next thing I want to touch on is, for the most part, quality and consistency matter. Consistency in topic, in style, in format, etc., which doesn't lend itself very well to generalism and jack of all trades. If I were to start Cast of All Trades over, still focusing on that same topic of generalism and jack of all trades sorts of stuff, instead of having a wider variety of topics and formats and styles and stuff like that going into it, I'd probably change the format of the show to focus more on just education, such as how to do X, how to learn X, how to develop X skill. Looking back, these were the episodes that typically performed the best for me, such as how to start silversmithing. That was probably my best performing episode to date so far as I'm recording this. This is partially because variety content isn't doing as well as it used to on YouTube and other similar platforms. Look at variety channels and compare views of videos from years and years ago to views that they get today. Even channels that still are in one single topic, if they change from thing to thing, they're still not going to do nearly as well. A good example of this is looking at gaming YouTube channels. I used to watch a lot of gaming videos on YouTube, and when I look back at some of my favorite channels, I look back and see, 5, 6, 7 years ago, some of these videos would get millions of views. Today, the same person with much higher quality videos might only get tens of thousands, or maybe on occasion they would get over 100,000 views. That's very different from what it used to be, because a lot of the gaming content that I watch is much more variety content, where they'll bounce from game to game to game as they complete them. Whereas if you look at someone who just focuses on one game, they typically do very well, typically get much higher view counts than those who've bounced from game to game to game. So it's just interesting that variety content isn't doing nearly as well as it used to. This might be due to algorithm changes over the years and other factors, but generally, jack of all trades and generalism as a topic doesn't lend itself well to the modern landscape of podcasting, YouTube, whatever. Now, as for the quality aspect that I mentioned earlier, high quality everything, thumbnails, titles, descriptions, etc. Your competition is every content creator on the internet, and viewers have come to expect a base level of quality, and your packaging is how you demonstrate your content is of a certain quality. So if I were to go in order of importance for how important the quality of this piece of content is, here's what I would rank from most important to generally least important or of lesser importance. Of course, everything should be high quality, but if you had to put an order on it, this is what I would do. The thumbnail and title are number 1 and number 2. Because if you have a bad title and if you have a bad thumbnail, no one's going to find your video. And if anyone does find your video, they're probably not going to click on it because the thumbnail looks bad or the title doesn't really ring out to them. Next is the introduction or hook of the video, the first couple seconds. Does it snap the person in? Does it catch them? Does it make them want to stay and watch the rest? Next is audio quality. Yes, I'm placing audio quality above video quality, because I know personally I am happy to sit through a video that has bad video quality if the audio is great and I can hear them clearly and I can understand them. If they have good video but bad audio, it's so much more cringe-inducing and much more difficult for me to sit through it. So audio quality is much more important than video quality. And finally, the description. Generally, I don't know of anyone who actually reads video descriptions, for the most part, but it's still important. It can help you appear more as people are searching around the internet for certain types of videos or certain types of podcasts, so it is still important. It doesn't matter how good your content is if no one clicks on it, i.e. if you don't have a good thumbnail, a good title, so that your target audience will be able to click on it. Hence why I put thumbnail and title up front. Introduction and hook come next to actually bring the person into the video or the podcast to have them want to sit and stay through the whole thing. Audio quality comes next, video, and then finally the description. To summarize this whole section of what I learned about YouTube and content creation and podcasting, this is what I learned of what it takes to grow a podcast, YouTube channel, etc. Create high-quality content. Create content regularly and consistently. Create high-quality thumbnails, titles, descriptions, and other marketing materials. Choose a topic and format you care about and can focus on making, quote-unquote, the best content in that topic and format. Learn from other successful channels, but don't copy them. Stick around long enough to get lucky. In essence, it's simple, but takes a lot of time, effort, and determination to continuously improve your content to the point you can grow your channel/podcast successfully. So that's generally what I learned about podcasting, YouTube, platforms, and whatnot. So what did I learn about myself from this whole process? First, I love podcasting. It's fun, it's great, but there's a lot of aspects that I don't like about it as well. I don't like posting on social media. I don't like trying to reach out to people to schedule them for interviews. Yes, the interviews themselves are fun, and preparing for the interviews are fun. Heck, even the editing afterwards, that can still be pretty fun. But reaching out to people and trying to schedule them, that was a big pain. I didn't really like that aspect about it. And also, after a couple months of this, I began to ask myself, what would this look like if I became a financially successful podcaster? And I didn't really like the answer. I love listening to podcasts, but thinking about what would it be like if I had to do this, if this was my livelihood, I didn't really want that anymore. Even so, I continued and I gained a lot from podcasting. I learned that I can commit to a podcast for a year, not just with one show, but two, and even with little to no traction. So I learned that, hey, I can do something for at least a year, if not longer, with little to no results in return for it. So that's awesome, that's helpful. I can add this to my stack of proof of cool things that I did. I developed and learned a number of skills. I learned basic audio editing, basic video editing. I learned episode ideation, scripting, episode research, how to interview guests, how to schedule guests. I developed my prompt engineering skills and AI skills. I learned how to do cold contacting and so much more. I reaffirmed that I have a general distaste for social media. And of course, I learned so much from the various topics of my interviews and my solo episodes. What did I learn about myself from podcasting? I learned that it's fun. I enjoy it as a hobby, and I want to keep it that way. I want to keep it fun and enjoyable. So I'm going to step off the gas a little bit, put the brakes on. So that brings me to the final topic of this episode. What comes next for the podcast? I'm no longer committing to a weekly upload schedule, and I may never upload anything again. I have one or two more episodes that I have in mind that I might record, I might not record, but we'll see. If I ever feel like recording something and uploading it, great, I'll do that, but I'm not committing to anything. I learned a lot over this past year of podcasting, and I'd like to thank everyone who's followed and supported me over this past year. I greatly appreciate it. If there's something that you really want to go and do, something that you've thought, man, that seems cool, I want to try it out, then what are you waiting for? Give it a shot. What's the worst that can happen?